Thanks. So, Phil, which one do we hit here? Okay. On demand, air already. That should be Kinect, right? Which one? Which one? Which one moves the? It might be. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Is that your next slide?
Now keep going back.
Maybe get your hand up to the front where you
All right.
comes up.
There it is.
That way.
All right. So, yeah, thanks, everyone. Good morning. As Phil mentioned, my name's Joe Hudak. I am a Senior Business Development Manager for Constellation right here in our Pittsburgh market. To give you a little bit of background on myself here, born and raised right in Pittsburgh, grew up right in the city. I live east of the city now in Murraysville. I graduated from Robert Morris College back then. Now it's Robert Morris University. But I've been in the energy industry for roughly 25 years now. So I've always been on the energy efficiency side as opposed to the power pricing side. So when I come to these conferences, in these energy forums, I just find it very interesting to hear about the market, hear about what's going on with the Heritage Foundation, learning about the weather, natural gas pricing, all of that, because that all factors into, at the end of the day, if you're a customer, looking at your total energy spend. So at Constellation, we like to look, when we go to talk to a customer, we talk to them about the total integrated energy solution. And when you think about it, your total energy cost is basically cost equals price times quantity over a period of time. Okay? So when you guys are talking about energy pricing, gas or electric, you're looking at that price. And locking that in or doing some sort of hedge is definitely important because you're getting budget certainty into the future. My whole career has been focused on the Q. So is there a way for you guys to become more energy efficient, doing energy conservation measures or upgrades? And that's kind of what I focused on over the past 25 plus years. So yeah, I will definitely talk about our EME offering. We call it Efficiency Made Easy. But I also could give you a little bit of background on Constellation, Exelon, and go into a little more detail. One other thing, over the past 15 years or so, Constellation, we've had a great partnership with Kinect and then On Demand before that, right here in Pittsburgh. We've done literally hundreds of power and gas contracts with a lot of your customers. And we've also used our funding program, I think, for over 40 projects that we've already put together for you. One gentleman who I think a lot of you guys know, TJ Navarro, I think this is the first year that TJ is not here at the conference. So if you don't know, TJ did get promoted back in January of this year. So TJ took on a leadership role in our energy efficiency division. So basically I report directly up to TJ now. It so happens the same week, there's a big trade show in Philadelphia called Light Fair. It's basically all the lighting manufacturers coming in, and lighting is always a big part of energy efficiency. So TJ had to make the decision, and he's there in Philadelphia. He does send his regrets. I don't know if he was supposed to golf or not this year, but yeah, he looks forward to a very strong 2019 with all of you and into the future 2020 also. So what I want to do here is just give you a little bit of background about Exelon Constellation and then jump right into our Efficiency Made Easy offering. If you have any questions as we go along, feel free to just ask the questions. I mean, this is designed to be interactive. If something pings your interest, just go right ahead and ask the question. Okay? And by the way, how long do we have? Till 12:30, right? No, 11:45, yeah. I know yeah. I could keep talking like TJ, but I know that it's me and then lunch and then golf, so I will keep it right in line with the time period here. So Exelon is our parent company, okay? Exelon's headquartered in Chicago. You could read a lot of this information, but we are a Fortune 100 company basically have the largest generating capacity on the nuclear side in the country. Okay? Exelon has basically three family of companies. The generation capacity, a lot of the nuclear plants, as I mentioned. They also have a lot on the regulated side. We own 5 utilities, okay? Atlantic City Electric, well, you can go through and read them, but that's the portion of the regulated side. And then in the middle, Constellation. We're basically the retail arm of Exelon. So our main business is selling power and gas in the deregulated markets, along with energy efficiency upgrades and projects. Okay? So who are we at Constellation? So we're headquartered, Constellation is headquartered in Baltimore. Basically, we serve 2/3 of the Fortune 100 customers for power or gas. We've done projects basically throughout the country, focusing, like I said, on natural gas sales, power sales, and also on the energy efficiency side. Excuse me for a second. A little bit of allergies this morning. So a lot of you probably are familiar with the map on the bottom right there. So we have power and gas BDMs basically throughout the country, selling power and gas. And you could see how many customers we have, roughly 2 million customers. I think on the power side, we are the #1 power provider in the country. On the gas side, I believe we're #5 or #6. And one offering that we have here on distributed generation and solar, we also have a full division called our Distributed Energy Division that basically does full-scale solar installations, usually 5 megawatt or larger, and those are usually funded over a 10 or 15-year PPA, maybe even out to 20 years power purchase agreement. Now, we also have an energy efficiency offering in a performance contract market, and I know there's some customers here who have used our performance contracting team, basically going out 10 or 15 years with a long-term loan or lease to pay for the energy efficiency upgrades. Okay? All right, I talked a little bit about this before, but again, at Constellation, when we engage with the Kinect folks, when we engage with customers, we're trying to get them to think about their total energy spend. And if you think about this, cost equals that price times quantity over time. So the price is very important. What you're doing with Kinect and with the different reps locking that in or hedging it for the long-term future, very important. Focusing on the quantity, if there's a way to reduce your energy usage, at the end of the day, a kilowatt not used is probably the cheapest kilowatt that you have. So if there's a way to look at lighting, HVAC, anything else that could reduce that kilowatt, it could definitely help your bottom line. All right, so when you look at your facility, be it a retail, be it a manufacturer, school district, what have you, the main thing is looking at everything all at once, not kind of focusing just on little things, but trying to figure out, what are your goals? How can energy efficiency help you get there? And then putting everything together to basically deliver the best benefit for you for the long-term pricing and long-term budget certainty. Okay. As we've been out there talking to customers, a lot of things customers ask us is when they're looking at their overall usages at their facility, how can they become more sustainable? How can they become more energy efficient? And when you look over on the left-hand side, there's a lot of different things that goes into it. Anything energy related could be included in how we fund a project for a customer. So it includes HVAC, controls, natural gas usage, all of that. Rebates. Are there rebates out there or grants from the utility that can be taken advantage? Absolutely. There's still money out there from the PA, Act 129. I think it's in the 3rd phase right now, but there is still rebates out there for reducing your overall kilowatt consumption. And then if you look at the energy pyramid, excuse me once again, what you're talking about is really how can you save energy and basically bring it back to the table to benefit your operation. Conservation measures, like putting in controls or just shutting off lighting, shutting off computers, that's going to help. So that's just behavioral things. When you look at energy efficiency, actually doing the upgrades, talking about lighting, talking about HVAC, windows, roofs, anything like that can have an impact on your business. And then the renewable side too, like I said, we do touch on that, be it solar, wind, or what have you, just trying to generate some additional resources for the end user. Okay, so we already went through the video. What we call it's called Efficiency Made Easy. We always say it's a funding program, not a finance program. Okay, so we're not going out. Constellation, as it mentioned in the video, we're not going out for a loan or lease. We're not using a bank. There's no third party involved when we're funding these projects. Basically, we're using our parent company's capital. So remember I told you Exelon's our parent company? Excuse me. They're allowing us to use their short-term capital to fund these projects for customers that are using Constellation for their power or their gas business. So when you look at these challenges, when we go in to talk to a customer, I mean, it's really, how are they using their kilowatts right now? How are they using their energy? Did they upgrade their lighting recently? Everybody's aware of the LED revolution. LEDs are the wave of the future, changing out. But how are you looking? Do you have sustainability goals? How do you plan to get there in the next 5 to 10 years? A lot of these things can be tied together. And then at the end of the day, when you start looking at any of these measures, I mean, there's money involved. Does the customer have capital budget? Do they have CapEx funds to help pay for this? Could they get a loan or a lease to help pay for it? I mean, all those questions are viable for a customer. At the end of the day, we bring an on-bill funding methodology that they can use our capital to basically fund these upgrades for their use. Okay? All this slide here is showing that there is a lot of different opportunities out there for customers when they're looking at energy efficiency. On the bottom right-hand side, again, how do they want to pay for this? That's the main thing. I'll get involved if I'm talking to a customer, if they say they have capital dollars or if they have access to very low-cost capital. I say, hey, we don't need to be involved to help fund it. We still want to sell you power or natural gas through Kinect. But me, from an energy efficiency side, I don't need to be involved. It's only when you don't want to use that capital or if you want to preserve that for something down the line. Okay? So again, it's called Efficiency Made Easy. I think it was called in the presentation Energy Made Easy. That's close. It's an E. But it is Efficiency Made Easy. Again, we call it, it's no financing. This is called funding because we're funding it internally. We've had this offering now for, I think we developed it in 2011, so we're going on 9 years now. Last year, in 2018, I believe we funded 200 projects, roughly about $50 million in revenue. Okay, not just here locally, but that's in all those deregulated markets. So basically, wherever we could sell a customer power or gas, we can offer this EME funding option for them. Okay, so how it works, just showing this up on the screen. Again, no upfront capital required. The savings will go to offset our monthly fee, and it is included as a line item on your power or your gas bill. When we first developed this back in 2011, it was really focused on lighting improvements mostly. Over the course of the last 5-6 years, it's morphed into anything energy related. So we've looked at some of the creative things we looked at. We funded roofing upgrades for some customers. We funded windows. We just funded an ice rink improvement for a local college at their ice facility. But as long as it's energy related, we will take a look at it. We have a team right here in Pittsburgh. By the way, our offices are in Robinson, Summit Park Drive, But we have our EME team sitting right there, the technical side of it, who will review any sort of energy efficiency project to see if it's something that we're willing to fund. Okay, so just expanding on this a little bit, up in the upper left-hand corner before EME, you have your baseline. So you know what you're spending right now. You know what your dollars are, what your cost is, and what your quantity is. That's your baseline. When you do an energy efficiency project using EME, basically the quantity is going to be reduced due to the upgrade being implemented. If it's lighting, I mean, some LED projects, you're seeing 50% reduction on the lighting portion of their bill. Not 50% overall, but 50% of the lighting portion. So your quantity is going to be reduced. Your price, whatever you agreed upon, whatever that rate is, that stays the same. But there'll be a line item added to the bill saying energy efficiency improvement. That cost will be there for whatever term that we agree upon. We typically have funded these projects from 36 to 60 months. Basically, as long as we can sell power in the market or gas in the market, how far out? Right now we're pricing into 2024, so that does lend itself to a 60-month term for a lot of customers. Okay, and then after EME on the bottom left, I mean, if there's savings, if it's lighting, the savings are going to be there for the customer. The quantity is going to be reduced because of whatever was put in, and then the fee goes away. The fee ends after that, whatever that is, 48, 60 months, whatever it might be. Okay, but the benefits, again, energy savings, quantity reduction, greenhouse gas emissions. We will do, when we put together these proposals for customers, if there is a kilowatt hour reduction, we will figure out what the emission savings are, how many cars are eliminated off the road. So that could be publicized within your company or in a memo just to play up how big the sustainability issues are. Okay. On a sample bill illustration, again, if you're getting one bill from the utility, if they allow us to do more than one line on the utility, your rate is going to be right up there. So whatever your rate is, be it whatever you agreed upon with Constellation, that does not change. There'll be a line item that says EME charge, or it might say energy efficiency upgrade. That's going to be a fixed line item that shows up on a monthly basis from the beginning of the program till the end. Okay. So I've talked about a couple of these already, but again, with the project, with our philosophy morphing on EME, if an energy project is focused on lighting, okay, energy savings is going to fund a good part of the fee. So if we're adding $1,000 as a line item on your utility bill, in most cases, when you look at lighting, there's going to be savings to offset that fee. Most lighting projects are going to be anywhere from 2 to 5 year payback, could even be less depending on what you have in your facility, but LED lighting projects are usually 2 to 3, 4 years at most on a payback. When you start looking at some of these other measures on the right-hand side, like HVAC improvement, boiler replacement, chiller replacement, cooling towers, anything like that, as you know, there's some energy savings with going with the new technologies, but at the end of the day, those paybacks are probably 10 plus years, if not more. When we did the roof, I mean, even if we double the insulation on a roof project, you're probably still looking at about a 25-year payback. That does not bother, or that does not stop us from funding it. We will still fund it using the EME program, that monthly line item, but instead of it being a savings vehicle like the lighting is, the HVAC and the other projects, it's more of a funding vehicle. Instead of coming up with $100,000 or whatever it is all at once, you basically are funding it over a period of time, up to 60 months. Some of the projects we've done, They've ranged in size from $20,000 up to, I think the largest one we funded was just under 5 million. So if you think about 5 million over 60 months, that's a pretty nice sized line item that the customer is going to have on their utility bill. But again, it gave them a way to fund the project without having to go out for a loan or lease or using their own capital dollars. Okay. A lot of these things I talked about already, just not in this format. But yeah, anything energy related. Again, just how we've focused our offering over the past couple years to make it more viable for any of the customers out there. As long as it has an energy component to it, even water conservation. We're a partner with the PGAA, and we've done some projects for golf courses. It involves lighting and HVAC, but it also involves water conservation, like irrigation and different things like that to help them save water. So again, if you're thinking about an energy project and you have any questions, by all means, get them over to the Kinect guys and over to us, and then we can tell you if it's something that we can work through or not. Okay, I got a couple case studies here. This one was interesting. A couple years ago when we talked about it, it's because the Penguins were still in the playoffs. Obviously, they're not in it this year, but we funded the lighting upgrade at the Cambria County War Memorial for the Hockeyville game back in, what was that, September 2015, I think. So the War Memorial, NHL came in, they wanted to make the rink NHL ready. There were a lot of upgrades that needed to be done up there. They were getting some money from Kraft, but they didn't have enough to do everything. So part of the project was upgrading their lighting, and that was what we funded. We brought in one of our partners, and we basically funded that and oversaw the installation. And that was a very, very good project for us because it was a televised. I think NBC televised that game, and some of the comments were how bright it was. It was a lot different than what the War Memorial looked like in the past. This was another one of our golf course case studies, but just a good experience with them too. There were savings on the lighting side. There were savings on the power side, how the whole thing was put together. But at the end of the day, we were able to put together a program where they didn't have the capital to fund it, so we were able to use our internal capital to basically fund it over a period of time. Okay. When you think about who we can do projects for, it's basically anybody that can buy power or gas from us. So as long as we can get that power or gas contract in place for a customer, we do have the option then to help fund projects if they're looking at us to do that for them. A question that always comes up is, what if I'm locked in with another supplier for a year or two? That's fine. We can still price up a power contract to start in the future. So say somebody's locked in through the end of 2020. What is that, roughly 18 months from now? We can put a power contract in place with them for a January 21 start date and take them out in 24, locking them in. We can do the project now, fund it, but the customer doesn't start paying us back until our contract kicks in. So it's called a delayed start. A lot of time, if lighting is involved, they're going to be recouping that savings on the lighting side for those 18 months prior to them starting to pay the project back via EME. Okay, and that option is still out there for customers. We have implemented a new offering which just came about in March of this year, but we have an EME standalone contract now. So instead of time before, the customer would sign one contract, a power or gas contract, and the EME information would be behind that, all the scope of work and everything. Now we can offer the customer, they still sign that power agreement, but the EME, the efficiency information, is under a separate paper with the customer. So it's a lot more user-friendly, I guess is the best way to put it. Okay? And that's really what I have. One last thing before I turn over to Phil. Phil, what time we have here? Okay. we talked about all these different projects that a customer could implement. Constellation, us ourselves, we don't implement any of the projects ourselves. We don't have an engineering team. We don't have the construction team. We rely on partners that we approve in the different areas. So we have partners approved for lighting, for HVAC, for roofing. These partners have to go through a pretty stringent approval process within Constellation. We look at their finances, we look at their insurance, their OSHA logs. We want to be covered when they're out on your site, but it's also to cover you guys, so if anything happens, you're using a viable contractor. If you're already working with somebody and you wanted to see if we could fund that project, we approve different contractors all the time. So we just have like 2 or 3 new ones that we reviewed and approved here in Western PA on the HVAC side. So we're always looking at different contractors that make sense for us, that look at projects and want to help customers at the end of the day try to fund these projects. So, okay.
Thanks, Joe. Any questions? Okay. The only thing standing between lunch is me right now. And what would an event be without having John Bodine say a few words? John is our sales leader. Thank you, Joe. Joe will be around if you have some questions during lunch. There you go. John Bodine.
Phil knows me too well. This is going to be the first conference where I didn't say one word. Not gonna. And Phil comes up. He goes, "Want to talk for 5 minutes?" I'm, "No, I'm good." He's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Okay." So I couldn't help myself. Joe, since you had on demand and not Kinect, you probably don't know what our marketing slogan is. You should know this. We've boiled it down to 4 words. We help customers buy less and buy better. There you go. Oh, I had it backwards. Buy better, buy less. No, listen, 11 years, it's been a long time. At one time, I was planning all this, putting it together. I was once upon a time a subject matter expert. But the first 4 or 5 years, what do you think my goal was for this conference? To win the golf tournament. It was all about what are the foursomes. That was my goal every year, and then my colleagues just cheat too much. It's a futile goal. Can't ever do it. I gave it up. So then, hey, we're going to have good content, good speakers. 4 or 5 years ago, we had Dr. Reed on. I'm an electrical engineering major. He's a professor. Our commonality ends there. I don't know what he talks about. And I still get nervous around him like I do a uniformed police officer. Just something... I just get a little bit nervous, but we thanked the sponsors. I really thank the speakers. I mean, the quality of the speakers we've had has gone up. James, I appreciate you felt like we did a good job and timed the market well. You're not getting any strokes, though, this afternoon. One flaw I have is I don't understand what customer golf is. But, we thank, we show you guys thanks by having a good round today. We dialed up a beautiful day. But, I'm proud of the suppliers we work with. I'm proud of my colleagues, the level of expertise. I'm mostly proud of our clientele list. I mean, when I look at who we are working with, from big cities to steel makers to manufacturing, hospitals, universities, colleges, small shops, I am really, really proud, and we don't take it for granted that you choose to work with Kinect Energy. I mean, Phil, you said we have folks in here that have been with us for 20 years. That's amazing. It's humbling, too. So I really appreciate it. Love that you continue to work with us and trust us. And we're going to challenge ourselves to always be better ourselves. We're adding a lot of new things. We're part of a really big company now with a lot of resources. And we don't want to rest on our laurels and take your business for granted at all. So thank you for your business. Phil, back to you. I don't know how lunch is working, if it's like last year back through there. Okay, thank you.
He really must want to golf. That's the shortest I've ever heard him speak. Lunch is being served behind us, so we'll go out through these doors, make a left, come back out, come back in and eat. There's some seats on the other side if you'd like to eat there. Inside, outside. The bar is officially open. Drink up. Golf next.
Thank you, Phil. So Phil originally asked me to talk to you kind of about Kinect, but that seemed way too boring, so I decided to do something different. You all are guinea pigs, so I have to do a presentation in 2 weeks, so I'm running it on you. So, you know, if you love it, you can give me all the applause in the world. If you hate it, just be quiet and I'll know. So I'm gonna have to go a little fast because I only have 10 minutes here, and this is supposed to be a 20-minute presentation, but that's okay. So the request that was made of me was to kind of talk about energy as a transitioning marketplace. Seemed kind of odd to me because the request made it sound like this is something new, like energy is going through a big, massive change right now. So I decided to go back in history a little bit. I'm not going to run through all these, and these dates aren't perfect. These are dates in which things were happening, not necessarily when they started. But any of you that have a little bit of gray hair and been doing this for a while can remember the vast majority of these events. And the point being, if we go all the way back to 92, so what's that, 27 years ago, energy has never been static. It changes every single day. I mean, we can kind of go through this, you know, at any given point in time, we either have too much energy or not enough energy. The price goes all over the place. And so the real trick in this industry is not necessarily understanding what's happening today, but it's really understanding what is going to happen tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because if the past is any indication, every year something big and new is going to happen. So I just decided to focus on a few things that we hear about that are in the news now, and kind of what do we think is going to happen, and then my own personal projection for where things could potentially go. So we're leaving the realm of reality a little bit here and going into projection. So obviously, many of you remember when President Trump was running, and coal is coming back, which I thought was really odd considering I live in the state of Kentucky, which is a massive coal state and it's been dying for years. But somehow we're going to bring it back. Well, the reality is that's not going to happen. Coal didn't die because of the government. Coal died because it just is too expensive. Natural gas is a lot cheaper. Renewables are putting a lot of pressure, causing coal retirements to go even faster. The remediation effort that is required in operating a coal-fired power plant, much less shutting it down, is ridiculously expensive. It's not like, for instance, a natural gas plant where you can literally stick the engine on the back of a flatbed and just turn it on. And then to build a new coal-fired power plant isn't going to happen. Costs way too much to build, costs too much to operate. The reason why you have plants that are currently running is because we've already invested all the money, and we don't necessarily have a replacement for it today. We talked about regulating hydraulic fracturing. Still hasn't happened. Don't necessarily see it happening anytime in the near future. There is not enough public pressure at the moment to cause that to happen. And in our current administration, they definitely aren't going to do it. Doesn't mean something couldn't happen in the future, but I'm not seeing it. And then the third one, there's this idea out there that renewables make energy cheaper, right? Because the sun is free. We all know that, right? Wind is free. Well, the reality in terms of the way we operate today, that's not actually true. The way we operate today, the more we rely upon renewables, the more expensive energy gets. And there's a lot of reasons for that, not the least of which is because they are not reliable. The sun isn't out all the time. The wind doesn't always blow, or certainly doesn't blow where we want it to blow. When you're talking about hydro, depending upon the nature of the hydro, the water doesn't always run at the rate we want it to. In order for the grid to handle that, it costs a lot more money. So yes, it's great that we utilize those, but it's not necessarily making it less expensive for us on our power needs. So what's going to happen in the future? So I decided to pick one topic, one that is talked about a lot, which is actually storing electricity, right? We can store natural gas. That's what allows us to actually function as a country. A lot of people don't realize that when it gets really cold in the wintertime, we cannot move enough gas from production to people actually being able to burn it. If you would have gone back when we had the epic winter, so a couple years ago, and done the math, when we came out of the winter, had we had a really hot summer and burned a lot of gas, we ended up having a mild summer, but had we had a hot summer, we would have had a problem going into the next winter of being able to store enough gas in order to have the amount we needed for the next winter. Wasn't really talked about, but that was true. So we have this idea of storing electricity, and what would that do to us in terms of the North American energy markets? What opportunities would that create for us? And is it even a reality? So let's just pick on one thing. Let's pick on Tesla. So Mr. John Bodine's here. He hates Tesla because, well, actually, you love Tesla. You just like betting against them. But let's take a look at Tesla. So their Model 3, they're expected to produce 500,000 of these once they get their plant in China up and running. So what does that mean? So if you just kind of do the math and you take the mid-size battery, the 62 kilowatt hour battery, at 500,000 of these, if you produce that many in a year, if you assume that you can fully charge that battery, so you'd have to assume that these cars, when they're not running, are hooked up to the grid, which is kind of the plan if you could actually make all this work. So you could get 2 full 8-hour AC charging cycles. If you charge them on DC, you can do it a lot faster, but that isn't readily available. So take all that math. That means that you could be able to store and then send back out approximately 4,000 terawatt hour, or sorry, 22 terawatt hours of battery storage from these. So that's 500,000 cars. So let's assume you kind of extrapolate that out. And if, as the pundits actually predict, electric cars become more of the norm rather than the exception, you've got approximately 4,000 terawatt hours is the annual consumption of electricity. Based on those metrics, that means that you would need 90 million cars to be able to store that much electricity to allow us to produce power whenever we wanted to, store it in a car battery, and then release it again. So 90 million cars, that's a lot, right? Well, we've got 276 registered cars in the US. So it's approximately one. So if you had 1/3 of the cars that were electric, that basically met those requirements, you'd have the ability to store the entire electric consumption needs of the country. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but for those that sit around saying it would never happen, the metrics would tell you you're wrong. And unfortunately, I meant to put what the average car life in here, and I don't have it yet, because that would just kind of give you an idea of how fast it would take to turn over the existing gas combustion cars to get there. So what would it mean if we actually had the ability on any large scale to store electricity? Obviously, you would have a lot more opportunities in terms of hedging your price if you are a consumer. Just like we do in natural gas, you'd have physical ability to buy power when it's cheap and then to be able to utilize it when it's more expensive, just like we do with natural gas. Yes, you can do it financially, but you'd be able to do it literally physically as well. We'd have more renewables. Renewables make a lot more sense when you can store the energy as opposed to having to move it and use it at the exact same time. You'd have more generation choices, which just kind of plays into more renewables. It doesn't matter so much how the energy is generated, or for that matter, where it's generated. Obviously, you'd have improved efficiency in terms of the entire the grid system, because if you could actually move the batteries themselves as opposed to having to move the electricity across these long lines and get all that line loss, that would give you some flexibility. I'm not going to go through all these. The emissions are kind of obvious. Your car in your house could suddenly be a moneymaker. You actually act as part of the grid, and you can store that electricity for a fee. So all this is being talked about out there in the news. These aren't my ideas. You probably would see more electrification of process. We've already shown that a electric car can actually have quite a bit of torque, something we never thought could happen, a lot of speed. They can accelerate very fast. Now think about machinery that today we utilize oil, natural gas, something else in order to be able to get the combustion that we need and the power that we need. And from a pricing standpoint, if electricity suddenly became a lot cheaper and you could store it, you may see more machinery moving towards being electrified. What are the other potential opportunities and effects? This one's always the interesting one to me. Potentially unlimited range. I still believe that we look at the electric car completely wrong. We keep trying to figure out how to charge it fast. It's completely unnecessary. What you need to focus on is figuring out how to replace the batteries. So you've got actually a concept car down there where they put all the batteries on the bottom, and when they need to recharge, they just pull the batteries out and they put new ones in that are already charged. So think about going to your gas station and just, as opposed to filling up your tank, you go, yeah, just switch out my batteries. You'd have to have a common battery, just like we do with plugs in the wall. You couldn't have a million different types, but it is possible. So we kind of talked about coal a little bit. Well, what about nuclear? I mean, one of the things we like about nuclear is it's cheap, zero emissions, but if you start moving towards battery storage and we have a higher reliance upon renewables, does that cause nuclear to start going down the same road as coal is? You already have some countries that have moved down the road of phasing out nuclear. In this country, we kind of went through we didn't build any nuclear for 30 years. We had a bunch of plants on the board, and now we've kind of backed off of nuclear again. Where would the price of power go to? I don't have that answer, but it's not going to go up as a result of this. It's going to go down. And it could actually, the more you're relying upon renewables that don't necessarily create the problems they do today, power could get pretty cheap. So what happens to natural gas at this point? Does the ability to store electricity start putting pressure on the natural gas market? Do we move towards more electrified options that don't require natural gas? Do you actually see natural gas production of electricity stop in terms of its increase? Because it's been moving up every single year. Does it potentially start going down? I don't have the answers to that question, but then what does that cause the price of natural gas to do? Presumably it would cause it to go down. So you kind of get this spiraling effect that the price of energy is just going down into the basement. What about electric planes? First of all, they exist today. This isn't some brand new concept. The first one was actually created in 1957. But in terms of on a commercial basis, there are companies out there, EasyJet's in partnership with a company I can't pronounce or never heard of, to actually build, it's like a 189 passenger electric plane. So the difference is, if I got my math right here, that a fuel-based plane's got like 40 times more thrust than an electric plane would. However, the efficiency of an electric plane is substantially more. So they believe with technology, eventually they can bridge that gap to where an electric plane is a possibility, as opposed to a consumption plane. Looks a little different because all the engines are actually sitting in the wing. You don't have anything outside the plane itself. More regulation, God only knows what we will do from a governmental standpoint at any point in time if you decide to move towards battery storage. What is the potential dangers of that? What do we want to control? What other effects do you have? This has been my concern for a long time. If you decrease the reliance upon fossil fuels, which wouldn't happen fast, but if you do, think about where most of the oil is produced. Think about where most of the revenues for those countries come from. What destabilizing effect does that have when you take away their money? That's what I get really, really concerned about. So you can just kind of see where a lot of these countries are. Again, I don't know. I'm not a political expert, but it does bother me. That is it. I think I tried to do it in 10 minutes.
And you did a great job.
There we go.
Any questions for Peter? Anybody? Any? Peter, thank you very much.
Not a problem. So